Hello everyone and welcome. Today we are going to hear about coping with change. Hello, Kayleen Martin, founder of Ripple Recruitment, talent agent, recruitment specialist and employee experience expert. So welcome to another episode in our series of Family and Friends, and this is where I get to talk with family and friends and hear some great stories and tips about topical or current topics. Today I'm delighted to introduce you to change therapist and change and uncertainty specialist, Victoria Harrison. Today, Victoria will share with us some tips on how we can cope with change and uncertainty and also recognise when our strategies aren't working for us. So welcome, Victoria, and thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Kayleen. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And before we get started, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and about your business, Change Therapy?
Yes, great. So I'm Victoria Harrison and I help people manage their mindset through change and uncertainty, and also to boost their emotional resilience, confidence and coping skills. So my business, rightly, as you said, is called Change Therapy, and I offer a combination of mindset coaching, NLP and hypnotherapy based life coaching. So I help people to get unstuck, get rid of any mental blocks that they have or limiting beliefs, and so that they can feel more equipped to handle any challenges. Essentially my focus really is helping people through change and to optimize their minds so that they think, feel and act better. Now more than ever, with all the different changes that have been going on, and particularly with the employment landscape, job losses or job security being affected, people working from home and juggling the responsibilities of being at home and also doing work as well. Managing our mindset and emotions is key when we're creating this new norm that we're entering into.
Absolutely. And there's so much change. Some people have such a positive experience during lockdown and now have re-entered some sort of normal life, and that's challenging to go back. And I know there's a lot of fear out there that people don't go back into the rat race that they were in before because it didn't make sense. But I think
that's right. And how nice was it to be able to wake up and actually hear all the birds and, you know, hear the quiet rather than all the traffic zooming past?
Yes, oh, absolutely. And I saw birds around my place that I hadn't seen here in 3 years. So that was really lovely. So, okay, so we'll get started, Victoria. I'd like to start with one of my personal approaches to coping with change, and it's basically to take a concrete bill and get on with getting on. So I know this is probably one of my least helpful coping strategies. So can you please share with us some other unhealthy strategies that people may use?
Yeah, and look, Kayleen, that's a really common strategy. A lot of people do that. And whether you're an employer, a business owner or an employee, we all want to be our happiest and most productive, right? And so like this global pandemic, I mean, sometimes change is completely out of our control and it happens to us. And then other times we make change happen through our choices that we make and the ideas. But regardless, we get to choose how we respond and how we manage our perspective. And coping strategies are more than just being a behavior or something that we do. It's actually a way of thinking about ourselves and the story that we tell ourselves, just to try and stay safe so that we don't feel those uncomfortable emotions. And we all respond differently to change and uncertainty, and there's no right or wrong really. But with regard to other unhealthy strategies, this could be anything from overeating or drinking, sleeping too much or too little, particularly in the workplace and around work. It can be procrastination, perfectionism, that's a massive one, sort of wanting to hold that fear of rejection or failure. Often a lot of people, they withdraw socially, so that can be withdrawing from colleagues or withdrawing from family and friends at home, avoiding things. We can often get into that trap of binge watching TV or Netflix, and also a lot of people are very much, they have this tendency to people please and not being able to say no. So these are all different strategies that we consciously or unconsciously make, and we're putting into practice, but aren't often always that helpful for us. And there's no one best right or wrong way. It's just really up to us to decide which type of coping skill or strategy is likely to be best for you in a particular circumstance or situation.
Right. One point really stood out for me there because I found it so strange. I had a couple of people tell me that before lockdown they considered themselves extroverts, but during lockdown they actually felt themselves moving more towards being introverts. So people were like a phone call. It was an unwanted distraction. So, for example, they really liked going into themselves. So it's interesting that that could be a coping strategy as well.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, then you have to sort of look at what's going on with how you're feeling as well. So often some people are feeling, a lot of things happen when change and uncertainty is involved, and it's almost like a sense of grief or loss. And a lot of people, they can be feeling angry or feeling sad, and a lot of people want to kind of regress or just stay close to themselves rather than being, like you say, extrovert and putting themselves out there. And it's a time to reflect, and yeah, things are not the same as what they're used to or familiar. So often a lot of people go into themselves.
Yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think something really important is that it's okay to feel that way, but don't get stuck in it, because that's when it becomes unhealthy, right?
Totally. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, emotions are, it's energy in motion. Energy in motion. So it's fine to, if you don't want to deal with an emotion at a certain time, it's fine not to do that. But ultimately, if you push it down and suppress it, it's only ever going to be, it's not going to go away. And often that's why a lot of people become sick or ill, because they're sort of suppressing emotions. And so, yeah, it's really figuring out what works in a particular situation for you. Often there's a problem that you could solve by changing it, or often it could be more emotion based, where it's something that you do need to kind of look into a bit more.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so let's move on. So there is an idiom from 1533 by Thomas More, and I quote, "I see ye cannot see the woods for the trees." So can you please tell us how we know if our strategy to cope is not working for us, and what is the first step to creating positive change?
So we all have lots of different coping skills, whether they're good or bad, and ultimately, you know, for yourself, you can feel it. So like I said before, you might be feeling lonely or sad or angry. So that's a real a telltale sign that something's not quite working for you. Often that you can get that sense of feeling stuck or even overwhelmed to the point where you can't make a decision. So indecision, and you're just sort of lacking focus. Yeah, and uncertainty really triggers the stress response as well. And so our nervous system pretty much is activated, and physically we get signs. So we can have low energy, headaches, aches and pains. You can feel that rapid heartbeat, or you can even get sweaty palms. So there's sort of different ways that you can tell, whether it be emotionally or physically. And I suppose the first step really is just to actually become aware. So tap into what your body's telling you, or what your feelings are trying to tell you. So you kind of get an awareness, and you evaluate your current coping strategies and figure out whether that's working or not. So once you have that awareness, then you can do something about it. And so healthy coping strategies, for example, would be something like moving your body, taking exercise, or even something small and simple like just having a bath, but it's actually being able to care for yourself. And unfortunately, when we are stressed or we're dealing with a change or a circumstance that's challenging, often self-care is the first thing that goes out the window, and we kind of tend to forget about ourselves. So yeah, the first thing really is being able to get awareness and then create a self-care plan for yourself. it's like when we're on an aeroplane, you know, and the oxygen mask, you're always told to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help someone else. And that goes with the same thing. I mean, if we're not feeling healthy or well ourselves, we can't function or certainly help anyone else. So self-care really is the first thing. And also it's really important just to get honest with ourselves, because we can push things aside and we can kind of keep going on with things. But ultimately, if we start getting a physical ailment or we're not feeling good, we do need to stop and listen to ourselves. But often that can be quite scary. So yeah, it's being able to have a look at what's really going on and be in a place where you can be responsible for yourself as well, so you can respond to things rather than react. And that's a coping skill that a lot of people have. They're very reactive in a moment. They will react rather than stopping and actually going, right, okay, what's really going on here? Is this a problem that I need to fix, or is this an emotion that I need to sort of learn how to cope with better? Because sometimes you can make changes, but other times you can't control a change, so you therefore need to cope with it.
And I think that's really important advice, particularly for women. I don't know what it is about us, but for some reason we want to take care of everybody else before ourselves. Such the wrong way around. But also there, I think the physical cues that you referred to. So I know for me, my first indication that I'm experiencing heightened anxiety is I actually physically feel nauseous, but also I get pins and needles all over my body. So when that's usually my first cue that for some reason I'm under extreme stress. So that's how I now know, and that's when I bring in my coping strategies. And it might be just quiet time for a little bit, or looking into why I might be feeling that way. So yeah, physical cues is quite a big one for me.
Yeah, definitely. And often a lot of people, we don't like to listen to ourselves or listen to our bodies, but actually that's the key indicator of where we're at. Someone else or something external to you, they can't tell you physically or emotionally or mentally how you are. That's your responsibility to check in with yourself. And so really, yeah, that's the first step to any change, is just having that awareness. And it sounds so simple, but yet it's really quite powerful.
Okay, thank you. Right, so there will be many employers, colleagues, family and friends who will be witnessing someone not coping at the moment. So how do you suggest that we can kindly broach the matter with somebody who is not coping?
Yeah, look, it's like I said, often it's quite important to understand that making a decision to either seek help or come to a realization that you might need, you're going through a rough patch, or you might need some help, that can be quite difficult for someone, or quite scary, because then you get into a place where things do have to change, and that can be quite scary. So really the best thing, the first and most important thing, is just to really be there for someone and actually listen, because not everyone wants to be told what to do, even though it comes from probably the best intention or the best places. And maybe asking someone about their self-care, what's someone doing to look after themselves, and that could be quite a gentle way into a conversation to find out if someone is sort of looking after themselves. Also doing some research to see what support systems are available. So whether that's at work through an employer, or also support locally if it's a home-based issue or problem, I guess. And really don't force the issue with someone, because like I said, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for someone to come to that realization that that there is a problem or a challenge, and they do want to change something.
Right.
And not avoiding someone as well, because that can also have quite a negative impact on someone. So really it's finding that fine line and that balance between not forcing someone to make a change or do something different, but also being there to support them. So listening is a key thing, really.
Right, okay. So it's very acceptable for us to, in the morning, greet our colleagues with, "Hi, how are you?" And we don't actually mean it as a question, it's just a greeting. But perhaps if somebody was in need, that could be, "Hi, how are you today?" Something more
Yeah.
with question.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of our communication comes down to, it's not just the words that we speak, like you've just demonstrated, it can come across through our tone and our body language. And so maybe just being a little bit more aware of the way that we communicate towards other people, that can then be more reciprocated and a lot easier to for other people to kind of communicate back and open that line of communication, especially if someone is kind of going through a rough patch and they do want to reach out or have someone help.
Kindness goes a long way, and I think we've learned a lot over the last few months about kindness. Thank
Sure
you.
have.
Okay, and that's actually my next question. Most of us know how important it is to speak kindly to ourselves and to those around us, but I suspect the majority of us aren't very good at doing that. So are there words and statements we should be extra mindful of using because they have a harmful, they're harmful rather than helpful to ourselves and to others?
Yeah, look, you're absolutely right. So many of us are actually running stories or this sort of negative self-talk, and often we're actually really unaware of it. In fact, more often than not, what we believe about ourselves actually, and the things that we say to ourselves, that helps create the life that we have now. So we're telling ourselves stories that are actually outdated, and they can really hold us back. So say, for example, I don't know, I'm too scared, or I can't do this, I'm not good enough. That's a key one. So many people actually are saying to themselves, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, or I haven't got enough time. That's another big one. And really, they're just fears and stories that stop us from doing what we want. And on a repetitive loop, more often than not, we're kind of unconsciously saying these things to ourselves repetitively without really realizing what we're doing, and it becomes such a common habit that we're not aware of it. So say, for example, one thing I used to do, which I became aware of, if I dropped something, I'd sillily say to myself, oh stupid, or something like that. But actually, over time, if that's the message that you're saying to yourself, then it's something that once you've become aware of, then you actually have the choice to change it into something a lot more positive and beneficial. So yeah, a lot of what we think is on autopilot, and by becoming aware of what we're thinking and what we're saying to ourselves, we can then choose to replace them with more helpful thoughts. So yeah.
Great, thank you. What might be a more helpful, so okay, so you got into the habit of saying, oh, stupid, or whatever it was when you dropped something. Would you say to retrain yourself, you would replace the word stupid with a positive word, or?
Yeah, I suppose it's really reframing, and that's a massive technique in coaching, is reframing the perspective, and also, like you're saying, using more positive, forward-focused words, because often we can put pressure on ourselves, and we can say, oh, I must do this, or I should do that. So you're kind of not giving yourself a choice, and it's finite, and then that puts pressure on you. So changing things to, oh, I can do this. So it's more words of possibility rather than completely closing yourself off. So yeah, for example, with the example of, oh, that was stupid, say, oh, that was a mistake, or oh, whoops, that was a mistake. So rather, you're kind of changing the energy behind the language that you're using.
Great, thank you. Right. Finally, we all know that we have just experienced our most significant times of change and uncertainty in all our lives, and sadly, some have fared less well than others. Do you have one key statement or more, that you can share with these people to instill hope for a new way forward?
Yeah, I think really it comes down to by learning to move from having more of a problem focused fixed mindset to more of a solution focused growth mindset. So you can really look more towards possibilities and opportunities. So really it comes down to reframing change as being essential for growth, rather than it being sort of an overwhelmingly bad thing. And for me personally, that's been a real game changer, is changing that perspective and looking more forward focused rather than away from something.
Great, thank you. Well, Victoria, thank you so much for joining us. Are there any, if you could, if there's anything you would like to say in closing, can you share that with us now, and also remind us of your business name and how we can find you?
Thank you. So yeah, really I'd like to just say one thing I know to be true is that if you really want results, you need to start with your thinking, and we're only ever as stuck as we think that we are. Everything comes from the story that you tell yourself, and the meaning that we put onto it. So gaining a new perspective, and when we embrace the concept of taking control of our own thoughts and having that responsibility for ourselves, it really can change your life. So really it's how we choose to manage our mind can play a massive part in how we move through times of change and uncertainty. So just to remind you, my coaching business is called Change Therapy. You can find all the details on my website, which is changetherapy.co.nz, and I coach small businesses, individuals, and yeah, there's lots of resources on the website. There's an ebook, a whole load of information, and you can book a free 30-minute discovery call as well, just if you're wanting to see if coaching would be a right fit for you.
That's great, and I hope what we've talked about today has resonated with some of our audience, and I hope that some of them will feel empowered enough to take advantage of your free 30-minute discovery call. I think there's a lot to be gained for some people by doing that. So I just want to thank you, Victoria, and thank you to our audience. Stay safe, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.